perimeter. So rather than the 30 properties you're talking about, the amount of voucher they can generate between those 6 properties or 8 properties is limited. In some they can raise is limited. Does that then push them to the back of the queue? Just by virtue of their geography and the epidemiology?
Well, the economies of scale are important, and I'm slightly answering on Simon's behalf, and I'll let him chip in a second. What I would say is one of the real advantages of having a player like Airband involved, who started from a wireless position and has moved into fibre, is that they are adept at providing hybrid solutions. So your point about a cluster of properties, 6 might be pushing it, but let's say rather more, let's say 15 or 20, who are significantly geographically distanced from any existing infrastructure, and therefore the costs of getting them connected fully using fibre and running fibre back to the nearest point of connection would be prohibitive. Airband have an approach where they can bring backhaul in, so they can bring the connection to the internet in wirelessly, but then deliver to those 6, 8, 10, 12 properties using fibre, so that you have future-proofed that network. So it is possible. We delivered a scheme in Torridge for 12 premises, where the vouchers paid for, I suppose, 70-80% of the cost of the scheme, and then CDS provided bridging to enable the rest of it. Is that a fair representation, Simon?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right to ask the question. You know, if there's only 2 or 3 properties, it's quite hard for us to make it work. The more, the better. But you know, these situations do exist. There's little hamlets tucked away everywhere. So we are quite good at finding the hard to reach places. Wireless is effective. Another green light thing for us is a helpful landowner. So if there's a farmer, to get a wireless signal in, we usually need to stick a pole somewhere, and that can be anything from 2 meters to 32 meters. But if we've got somewhere who's willing to have a pole on their land, or willing to dig a trench to get power to it, or something that will facilitate making it work without expensive wayleaves and things like that, then those are other green lights for us. So it's very much, we are Airband Community Internet is our company name, and we are aware that community engagement is really key to making these tricky ones work. So that's another green light for us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've had a request if we could have a copy of the slides, and especially the map, if that's possible. If you could let Mr. White have that, so he could then send them all out to us, please.
Of course.
Bit wary of the map, I'm sorry to say.
The person who asked is a naval man. He's used to see maps. Right, Councillor Coulson, please.
Hi there, just to clarify something. So my understanding is a lot of the work that's already been done involves the taking fibre to the cabinet at the end of the road. And phase 4, I think you called it, is taking fibre to premises. Is that correct? Because from what I can see in my local area, and only today chatting to an OpenReach engineer at FA Masters, that the infrastructure beyond that point is where a lot of this falls down, and the mast he was up hadn't been looked at in 10 years. It hadn't been inspected in 10 years. So to individual groups of 8 houses or whatever, it's not going to matter what you've got going to the cabinet if that's not been dealt with because of lack of investment over the years. So I'm not sure if it's best for Simon on that.
Well, I think that's probably me, because it relates to fibre to the cabinet, which was an OpenReach solution rather than the fibre to the premise that Airband will be deploying henceforth. Yes, you're right. A network is only as fast as its slowest point, and the quality of infrastructure, the copper infrastructure between a cabinet and an individual's property is critical. One of the reasons that I don't have my video on is that whilst I live in a tiny town in Somerset, I'm connected to a cabinet. I think I heard you saying earlier on that you should be getting 80 meg. Is that right?
I meant to be getting 35, but some days I get
okay.
0.85 due to the weather, apparently. Which
right. So I'm in a similar position. My cabinet is probably 250 meters from me. I should get 60. I never get more than 16, and since COVID, I'm often left on 2, 1.5, something like that. So I do share your pain and empathise. It's not a question of sloping shoulders, but we have no control over Openreach's existing infrastructure. They are required to upgrade their infrastructure, and I think our recommendation, it's kind of hint and a tip, is to complain about quality of voice rather than quality of data, because a lot of contracts that we currently have in this country don't necessarily, they provide up to speeds rather than guaranteed minimum speeds. So the fact that you're getting a speed probably means that they are not in breach of their contract. But if you cannot sustain voice calls, they Openreach are required to deliver a line which is capable of sustaining a voice call. And so we'd always suggest that you can you make your representation perhaps based on that, and that may well see an upgrade. And to be fair to Openreach, they do have a massive annual policy of infrastructure upgrading, but they're upgrading the most mammoth infrastructure, and one that has been rolled out over decades. So some lines, yes, are of pensionable quality. They will be fixed at some point, or they will be retired in favour of fibre. But in the short term, you need to complain.
Okay. Well, yes. Thanks. Yeah.
May I just ask a question? Sorry, Councillor Coulson. Go on.
I'll say, I've read lots of residents I speak to, and it is personal as well, but a lot of residents I speak to locally, they feel almost gaslit. They're forever being told of these increasingly super fast speeds they're getting, and then actually, because of as you said, the final hurdle is the copper 10, 15-year-old infrastructure, they're not getting that, yet everything they're being told is that they are.
Well, there are two things. There is undoubtedly something around the quality of infrastructure in localized situations, and that can be fixed, and the introduction or the replacement of lines can significantly improve and take you to those figures that you should be getting. The other thing that it is always worth checking with people, because of the history of how broadband has been rolled out in this country, with standard ADSL, with standard copper broadband that we used to have. As technology improved, speeds got faster. So we went from 1 meg to 3 meg to 5 meg to 17 meg in some instances in more urban areas. And people didn't need to do anything. They just got faster speeds and got slightly used to having slightly faster speeds. With fibre to the cabinet, with the Superfast programme, you have to change your contract. You have to ask to have a faster speed. And we do still find that there are people who will complain about the fact that on the one hand they have been told that their cabinet has been enabled and they can get faster speeds, and yet they're still left dawdling on 1 or 2 meg, and actually it's because they haven't actually asked for a faster speed. It's frustrating. Providers should be better at informing people that the opportunity for them is now there, but the reality is it doesn't always happen, or it doesn't always happen effectively. So if anyone does say that to you amongst your neighbours, it is always worth challenging. 9 times out of 10 they'll say, yes Andy, I know, I'm not stupid. So you have to approach it with caution, but there are, and it is a great pleasure occasionally to find somebody who can actually order a service they just didn't know they had to.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Matt.
May I just ask a question around that, please? Does it make a difference to whether you have overhead cables still to underground?
It shouldn't make any difference if the integrity of those cables is sound. There can be things that will damage or impact a connection. So Andy was talking earlier on about when it rains, he sees a massive diminution in speed, and that can just be if you have trees rubbing on the line and it exposes the copper, which happens on a regular basis, then that can massively impact the quality of your speed. Similarly, on the one hand, you might think that if you underground the cable, then it won't be prone to that, but you have situations where you can have traffic going over, you can have broken culverts that will result in something rubbing on the wire, and obviously ducts can flood. They can silt up. So you can have a situation again where the copper is either slightly exposed or slightly damaged, and then if you get water into that, you get a similar problem. So it doesn't really make any difference. You're probably slightly more protected if your cables are undergrounded, but it's significantly more expensive to do. So the kind of work that Simon is talking about, they will use existing infrastructure where at all possible to minimise the environmental impact. But that may mean stringing additional fibre on existing poles or using ducts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you very much. You partially answered my question already about speeds. I'm particularly worried in my ward, which is South Taunton on the edge of Dartmoor, that we do have a lot of poor broadband quality here, particularly the poor parish council. The last time I went, everyone sounded like Daleks. We couldn't hear anybody, and it sort of finished abruptly. So I'm just wondering if you've said that you'd contact parish councils. I'm wondering if we could get something in this area so that we could get some information about what could be available. I know they did a survey last year and there were quite a few households in South Seal Village and South Taunton Village that were interested. I haven't done anything in my village yet, but I'd be really grateful if we could get some information so that at least people know there might be something that can be done about it.
Absolutely. So my social life revolves around going to parish council meetings. I'm a little bereft at the moment because I don't get to go out. But as people are kind of embracing this sort of approach, I'm going to parish council meetings via Zoom and Teams increasingly. Just send me an invitation, and then I can, in advance of that, I will look specifically at the details around that parish. I can give you an overview. There may be some people who are in the situation that we were discussing earlier who might actually be in a position to get a better service, and impression and everybody knows in inverted commas is actually really important. So we are working with a community within West Devon. I won't kind of go into details, but essentially in that community, everybody knows that you can't get airband. Now, that everybody knows that you can't get airband is somewhat undercut by the fact that in a parish of something like 120, 140 houses, airband has 60 customers with another 10 or so on the order books. So actually around 50% of the village not only can get airband, but do get it. But for perfectly understandable reasons, it's the people who cannot get a service who are perhaps a bit more vocal, and that can create an impression whereby people who could otherwise order a service don't even bother to try because everybody knows that you can't get airband or you can't get open reach. So I'm really happy to kind of do that very detailed stuff that relates to a parish that lets, in some instances, people know that they could improve their service significantly, either by changing their provider or changing their contract. So yeah, just invite me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hipsey, final comment, please.
Yes, it's just a comment rather than a question, really. I'm sure our guests are aware, like most local authorities, we've declared a climate change emergency. And I think it's been interesting during the COVID crisis that we've been doing Skype or Zoom virtual meetings. And it's pretty obvious that all 31 members have cut down their travelling an awful lot because they can use online meetings. So it strikes me that one of the benefits from increased broadband throughout the region is people are likely to be travelling rather less, and therefore that helps in terms of climate change.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think we are moving into a new normal, and I suspect that as things loosen and hopefully lockdown loosens and we don't see a second spike, etc., even regardless of that, we are unlikely to see a complete reversion to the way we did things 6 months ago. And I think a lot of that is to the better. I simply say that it does rather punch a hole in my social life, the fact that I don't get to travel to parish council meetings, but also just as a general request to anyone that the only thing that I'm finding very frustrating about all of this is that if I have a meeting that ends at 10:30, people are entirely at will to start my next meeting at 10:30. And the ability to do so, I'm sure you're all familiar with this bit where actually you can have days where you are just in what seems like the same Microsoft Teams meeting from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and you don't even get that bit where at least physically you could walk to somebody else's office and get 2 minutes off. But aside from that, yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
I think we can agree with you on that one. We've had a few Tuesdays like that recently.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Where we've just been in meeting upon meeting. And I think, yes, sometimes a bit of a journey in a car or whatever does make life a bit easier. Yes, thank you, Councillor Cheadle. We share your pain. Yes. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us, gentlemen. This will be going on to more of a regular agenda set for overview and scrutiny. I don't know whether Councillor Cheadle wants to say what his group are doing and how often you see anything needing to happen, Councillor Cheadle?
No, I mean, the thing that was on our agenda was to do what we've just done today. So that's one bit of progress we've made. And I think the main thing is, having made remade the connection, we now need to do as we suggested and try and identify the clusters that we would wish to work with Airband and CDS to bring into the broadband community. And the quicker we get on and do that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Simon, put your fingers in your ears, but Airband are not the only provider. So with the voucher scheme, we have the ability to work with any provider, although obviously one of the significant criteria for a community to select their provider is who is working nearby. So I just, in the interests of fairness, would point out that we can work with a number of providers, although Airband are extremely cuddly.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Matt.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Bye, Rick. Right. If we can go back now, please, to item 2, the confirmation of minutes, please, Mr. White.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Oh, hang on. Whoa. All right. You don't have to lean on your hand, Mr. Molyneux. I haven't forgotten. I've just seen you.
It's because I've got a very good desk. That's my issue. So I just wanted to, now that Airband have gone, I just wanted to make members aware that you may have seen in the dim and distant past an email from Mike Ward that updated around we put a bid into government for some funding for broadband to connect NHS surgeries up, and that was done on the JLP area, and we were successful in that funding bid, and there are a list of surgeries that are going to get full fibre connections. And the business model is then that once we've connected the NHS surgeries up to full fibre networks, is that there will be an opportunity to then spoke out from those surgeries to connect properties in the vicinity if the costs are reasonable. Now that is with BT OpenReach, and I think there's 3 or 4 surgeries in Tavistock, there's one in Lifton, there's a couple in Yelverton, and I think there is one at Princetown. So I've got more detail about what that offer will be. So it's in addition to everything that's just been talked around there by connecting Devon and Somerset, and it's through a separate funding stream that we bid with Plymouth as part of the JLP for sort of improving connectivity for the doctor's surgeries. But there will be an option to give for properties to be able to be connected as well and benefit from full fibre connections. So it was just to make members aware of that. And when I get more information, I'll feed that back into the broadband working group, and then they can update Obi and Scrutiny. So
Okay.
just to let you know, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. White, please.
Sorry, Chair, before I start, I see Councillor Kimber's put a comment in the chat.
He wants to comment about the minutes, doesn't he?
Oh, okay. I was going to say the same point actually, but I'll let Councillor Kimber go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was just a bit concerned about the minutes on page 3 in section A1, I think it is, where it says in the second paragraph, while some town and parish councils have been heavily engaged with the borough council, other councils had unfortunately been very passive, and this had been to the detriment of their local communities. I just thought that read as if the local communities is lost out, and I can't really remember that being said at the meeting. So I just wonder if we remove that sentence.
Mr. White, please.
Chair, it's within the remit of the committee as to whether these are a true and correct record. So if it's a wish of the meeting to delete that, that's absolutely fine. And they'll be agreed subject to that sentence being deleted. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any disagreement? I'm looking in the chat box. Nobody's typing, so if you could amend that, please, Mr. White.
Will do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Right, and then if we can come down to items requiring urgent attention, there's been nothing that's been brought to my attention. Nothing from you, Mr. White?
Nothing. Thank you, Chair.
No. Right, the public forum, well, they'll have been waiting an awfully long time, but no, we didn't have anything. I forgot about them. Right, item 6, the hub committee forward plan. Now, I'm having a struggle here. Right. Mr. White, if you could lead us through. I've got today's agenda up, but not the paperwork that went with. So
the only thing, sure, Chair, the only thing I would add is that, of course, because this was an additional meeting added to the calendar, we have fallen out of sync somewhat with the hub committee. So actually,
right.
this is a version which was published a number of weeks ago, which, for example, refers to the agenda items the 28th of July. So
oh, right. So they've had the hub committee.
Version. Yes, they have indeed. So, I mean, there is various updates to that one, which will be reflected in the next hub committee forward plan, which will publish before the O+S committee on the 1st September, Chair.
Okay, so we'll fall back into alignment then.
Yes.
Right, okay. Item 7 is the A386 transport infrastructure. Just to let you know, I have spoken with Councillor Andrea Davies from Devon County Council, and she said the bid was sent in and everything, and it is proceeding along. There's been a few hold-ups, as we can all imagine and appreciate, due to COVID, and she will come back to us when she is able to do so. So that's there. Right, we've done that. So, right, now, Mr. Hawke, Member Locality Fund Review, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Pearce is on the phone. Were you going to introduce this one, Councillor Pearce?
Oh.
Would you like me to?
I'm happy to, if you so wish, Chairman.
Okay, should we do a double act then, Councillor Pearce?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what's happened to the chairman.
Oh, I'm still here. I was just letting you two sort yourselves out.
Oh, right, okay. Right. Yeah, I wasn't actually, Neil, I'll let you do it because I wasn't prepared for this, actually.
Not a problem, Councillor Pearce.
Sorry.
So, before you today, members, you've got it's a short report which gives an update on some of the community funding schemes and processes we have in place. The three main schemes being the member locality funds. As you'll all be aware, you have £500 per year of the council term to award through a number of grants to local community schemes. We also have the Seymour Lottery, which is a lottery that we established in 2018, which again enables voluntary and community organisations to sign up and effectively raise funds for themselves by promoting their scheme and encouraging people to buy lottery tickets. And the final one is the Crowdfund Platform, which is a platform again that we formed in 2018 that enables community groups to register their project, and as West Devon Borough Council, we could agree to contribute up to 50%, up to a maximum of 2,500 to a crowdfund scheme. So there's three key schemes, and I think today it was really a discussion. I think there was an agreement to bring certainly the localities budget back to this forum just for a review as to its effectiveness. I think last year 15,500 was the total budget allocation, £500 per member, and at the end of the year 6,190 was remaining to be allocated. So we have rolled that forward to this financial year, and Appendix A to this report actually sets out each member's individual localities budget for this financial year. So it's really to open up for any thoughts from members as to, is there anything we could do to be more effective in publicising some of these schemes? Because I think particularly the Seymour Lotto and the Crowdfund Platform, there's a real opportunity to highlight the availability of those platforms to our community and voluntary groups as a way to raise funds for delivering what's important to them. So members' views appreciated.
Right, comments please, members. Oh, golly. Hello?
Yeah, if you...
Yes, please.
Just a favourable comment, really, particularly Mr. Hawke. Having used portions of my member locality fund during the last financial year, I did find it particularly easy to arrange through council officers to spend that money and put it to good causes. So I think that's a success story as far as I'm concerned, and I would urge anyone in this position to use that money to do so, because it is so very easy to get it to the people who need it. So that's great. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Sorry, I still can't get back. Where am I? There we are. Right. Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really a general comment in that my understanding was we were going to have like a crib sheet for all the various schemes for us to be able to use as members to be able to promote them both to the local parish councils and the wider community. Has that been done yet, please?
It hasn't as yet, Councillor Mott, but we will get that sorted. I think we're also going to include some links to some wider schemes, because obviously while we've got 3 core schemes at West Devon, there's also a further scheme. As in Devon County, for example, each county councillor has £10,000 a year to allocate. So I think we're going to put all of that together. So within the next 2 weeks, you'll have that crib sheet.
Thank you.
May I just ask, Mr. Hawke, is that I know in Tavistock, the 7 members have been very successful at working together And there was one application where somebody wrote to us all, as you know, West Devon with Dartmoor included, but they wrote to everybody individually. And I wrote back to the person and said, look, you know, if we all do it, it's only £30 each, because I remember a couple of councillors in Oakhampton had pledged 200, somebody had pledged 100, and actually it only needed £30 from all of those members who needed to, would have given the same amount of money. And to lose £30 out of your pot is nothing to losing a couple of hundred out of your pot for one thing. So it's worked very successfully in Tavistock for joined up members to be able to share their allocation, and it's made our money go much further. And I don't know whether many members are aware of that, and that you can be, for example, a group of villages, if they so wished to do it together, that they could. It doesn't seem to tell you that anywhere in writing, that that's what we could do. So I think, adding to what Councillor Mott's just said, you know, I think that is a point that, you know, people can do. The other thing is that members were not aware until very late in the day that they could have carry forward if they so wished. So I think for that to be pointed out, how far you can carry it forward, how long it can be carried forward, whether it's 1 year, 2 years rollover, or whatever. But I think it's a really good scheme. And I personally think for Tavistock, because I don't know if anyone else is, but for Tavistock it's worked brilliantly. We spent all our money, and we have been able to give some really good value to many of the charities, groups, etc. And it has been able to help, oh golly, I can't think of the word, bring money in. I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. I can't think of the word. Sorry, completely gone. I was doing so well until then.
Is it match funding?
Thank you very much. Match funding, etc. And it has worked well with that as well for varying organisations. So I'm very in favour of it. So I don't know whether anybody else wishes to comment.
I think if I may interrupt there, Chair, my understanding was from the original Hub Committee was that it was dependent on how the partnership funding went, and there was due to be a review of that, as well as a review of how the members' locality schemes went, along with the Seymour Lottery and the Crowdfund Platform. So I think that's why members were not made aware of a possible carry forward, because that review has not yet taken place.
Right, okay. So is this report, Mr. Hawke, sort of leading towards what you will be writing for the Hub then?
Well, we've already taken the Hub report. We will take a further partnership report is due back in the spring, or certainly aligned to the budget setting process. So later this year and then in the spring will be a further partnership report. We haven't had any further applications for partnership funding from any further partner organisations. As members may be aware, we do have an application form, but certainly, yeah, that will form part of that report. But currently, our proposal is that the member funding will be continuing to roll forward each year, the member locality funding, until the end of the council term. I think that's what Mrs. Buckle said on the last Hub meeting.
Right.
There is some flexibility with particularly with the crowd fund, and it's probably worth me just touching on crowd fund, because I think that's an area where, as a council, we've allocated 14,500. We have 14,500 remaining for crowdfunding, which is very much match funding. There is some flexibility there, and members' views on crowdfund again would be interesting, because I think the uptake's been low in terms of applications for the Crowdfund Platform. And I had a chat with the Crowdfund Platform themselves earlier today, and we're going to do some work to actively promote the Crowdfund Platform to our community groups through some webinars. Previously, we held
I think we've just lost you, Neil.
Meetings, which were
Neil, you may
okay
need to go
attended,
back a little bit, unless
Oh.
that was just me. Can anyone else hear Neil?
Okay, let me stop my video. Just hello.
Hello.
Oh, am I coming through clearer now?
No.
It sounds as though you've been out on the lemonade for lunch.
Right, let's try that. Does that make a difference?
That's much better.
Okay, I think the video too much for the system. So yes, I think the crowdfund platform, I don't know how much you heard, but the crowdfund platform is an area where we do need to publicise some more. It is a match funding platform, but the uptake has been low to date. So we're now in the third year of crowdfund, but we've only had 3 applications in that period. That will be part of the crib sheet on the crowdfund platform.
Okay. Councillor Kimber, you'd like to make a point?
Yeah, just a couple of points when I'm thinking about it. I just think crowdfunding is quite a complicated, modern way of raising money. And I wonder whether people will understand how it works. And also on the locality budgets, I keep forgetting I have one, which is why I haven't spent it.
I don't think you'll be the only councillor. Right. I think we've lost Neil. Have we lost him again?
No, I think.
Right. Steve, would you like to make your comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to point out that as we look in the recovery plan and talk about the community groups, I think there's an opportunity as we see how we work closer with communities and resident groups that we look at the community funding model in terms of that. So picking up on what Councillor Kimber said about not being aware that you even have the funding, and what Councillor Mott was saying about having a breakdown of what all of that funding is for and what options there are. I think we need to weave that into that community cluster and how we interact with communities more and make it a bit stronger would be my observation and recommendation, to put that forward into the sort of the recovery plan. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. I trust that is all okay there. Councillor Pearce, did you want to add anything from there as we've temporarily lost Mr. Hawke?
No, I don't think so, Chairman, except to say that members should publicise when they go to their parish council meetings the lottery and the crowdfunding scheme. I mean, if parishes or organisations use this, they can raise quite a bit of money. So, if they've got projects where they need grants, I believe this is a good way of doing it.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But I apologise. I've been having problems all the afternoon, and I have to say Zoom is far inferior to what normal. I've forgotten what it's called now. Skype. I've just had awful problems all the afternoon. So, I thank Mr. Hawke for taking over.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Daniel, please.
Hello, yes, thank you. I too was trying to join the Skype meeting today. I hadn't realised we were going to Zoom, so apologise for my late entry. I was just going to say I was very grateful and pleased to have a locality budget for ward projects. And I really think the idea of joint funding with perhaps some of the other councillors on our cluster would be really helpful for community groups. And also I did save some for the Skills for Life last year, but they didn't actually apply. But it wouldn't have gone ahead anyway this year. So I suppose they can always apply if they're going ahead. And I just think the sort of how to use the crib sheet would be very helpful for me, seeing as I'm fairly new to this, and what to think think of as being worthwhile projects to support. And also, I think Councillor Pearce's reminder that we do need to let our parish councils know that we've got this money, because they're always on the lookout for funding for projects. And yes, certainly with our community group that I'm chair or facilitating the meeting at the moment, that would be really helpful if we could have a bit more information for them. I think we're going to try and go ahead with having a bulletin for them, and that's the sort of thing that we could put in there, sources of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sellis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just a point of interest that any information I receive from Devon County Council about funding, I always share with my parish councils and with members. I sent one today. I just think it's just communication. And I do also agree with Councillor Kimber that they can be quite labour intensive at times. And I think that puts some people off, because or councillors, because we're very busy. I mean, actively trying to find funding. But I think pinging it to people that that are always looking for any help with finance, that's good, because I send that in a separate email to local voluntary groups around Tavistock, and I don't think it's beyond the wit of everyone to be able to do that, just to spread the word. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hawke, lots of feedback for you there. Hopefully you'll get some of it. So, members, if we could now move on. Oh, it's Mr. Hawke again. The item 10, overview and scrutiny, the annual report.
Sorry, Chair, before we move on, we just check there was a recommendation on Mr. Hawke's original report. Just make sure that no members were wishing to vote.
Anybody going to type?
No, there's nobody typing. I think we can assume that recommendation is declared carried. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. White. Right, do we have a Mr. Hawke?
If I may, Chair, I wrote the report, if that helps. I'll save Mr. Hawke's
okay, yes, you did.
Broadband.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to go back. Right, okay, thank you, Mr. White.
No problem at all. Thank you, Chair. Just to point out to members, it was the report was to follow, and it went out as a supplement. It's not part of the main agenda papers. And the only thing I'd really add, it is a constitutional requirement for O+S to receive an annual report on what in effect it looked at last year, which is reflected in the appendix to the report. And the recommendation seeks to for council to be recommended to approve the annual report as drafted. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Does anybody have any comments or anything to make, please? From what was a really good, interesting read, but then I probably would say that. But I thought it was a good read, and that actually we achieved probably a great deal more than we were aware of, and of going forward with things and keeping things on our radar, as we have quite a few issues that we're taking forward to keep going and to keep pushing to try and help the West Devon residents to be able to access newer systems, funding, roads, railways, etc. And also to look into what is happening within our borough that we need to scrutinise. Does anybody else have a comment to make, please?
Chair, just a question, if I may, please.
Thank you, Mr. Go on.
I just wondered why in the members' profile list, why Councillor Kimber as Vice Chair has to have Councillor Cheadle's photograph.
Now, that's funny you should say that. We had this conversation this morning, and in one I've looked at this afternoon, Councillor Kimber's Councillor Kimber. So, I don't know.
That was an error, and that was a draft, and the draft inadvertently got hooked up, Councillor Pearce, so that's an error. So the right version is the one that was published last night and this morning.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, Councillor Kimber told us he wasn't too worried. He was being self-deprecating.
Perhaps he has dreams of being a Vice Admiral.
I don't think I do. I think Councillor Cheadle is very good looking, so I would have come out well.
He's not here to hear all this, so we're okay. Things are just changing. Councillor Sellis, did you want to comment, or is that just all the times have changed?
No, I don't want to, thanks.
No, I think it's all the times changed on the chat, and it just moved. Right, so if we can, if anybody, hang on. Oh no, hang on, I've lost. So if anybody is not in agreement with us accepting this report, could you please type now? Nobody started to type, have they, Mr. White?
They haven't, according to my PC, thank you, Chair.
Okay, then that one goes through. And then I've got to go back to the other bit. Oh, this is too complicated today. Right, let's go back to my agenda. So we now have our draft annual work programme. Oh no, task and finish groups. Strangely enough, we haven't had any. I am correct in that, aren't I, Mr. White?
You are correct, Chair. I mean, there's a couple of legacy groups which but haven't met for a good period of time. So at the moment, we've got no groups in existence, if you like, in that sense.
Right, okay. And the draft annual work programme, please.
Just to point out, Chair, the 1st September meeting, which I alluded to earlier on, that is going to be dominated by 2 agenda items, which will be the amended budget for this year and the draft recovery plan on the back of the last O+S meeting and the member workshops. So that's going to be a busy meeting, to say the least. Then we look towards October, and again, there's the items including the Ombudsman annual letter, a couple of standing agenda items relating to the financial stability group, hub forward plans. So then October looks fairly busy, but then November, then we go on to the annual update from the Community Safety Partnership. And aligned to that, we've got the safeguarding update. So, yeah, actually, when you look at it, 3 meetings aside of Christmas, and all 3 of them do look like they're fairly busy.
Yes, they do. So if we leave that as it is, and then
I suppose the only question for you in the committee, really, Chair, is picking up on your remarks from earlier on with regard to the A386 and the broadband items, to keep them on the agenda, if you like, for the committee. It's probably a question of when the next updates go onto the programme.
If we could add the A386 and the trains one onto the October meeting, please.
Was it your wish to invite the lead cabinet member from DCC?
We'll see if she needs to, if you can ask her where she is, okay. Because it is reliant on the government a bit or the Ministry of Transport, or Department of Transport rather, for them to give her an indication as to where they are with the bid. Because if they haven't moved very much further, then I'm not sure what she will be able to bring to the table. So if we could just let her know from this meeting that we would be asking for her to keep the date free if we should need to, depending on whether she's heard anything or not.
Yeah, and I'm minded to, Chair, for the broadband item. We always obviously have the standing agenda item about the financial stability review group. If we do similar for the broadband working group, because if Mr. Barrow's given a commitment to basically be in attendance at those working group meetings, it makes sense for them to then feed into the formal setting of O+S.
Yes, and Councillor Cheadle can ensure that happens to remind us as well.
Yeah.
Right. So coming back to this, so we've done that. Member learning and development opportunities arising from this meeting.
I suppose the one I've got, Chair, is the budget setting workshop, which will obviously take place a week before O+S on the 1st. So there's a plea for that one. So it's the amended budget for this year.
Yes. Lisa's providing a full workshop for that, isn't she?
Yes.
Is that the one that's on the 18th of August? Or is that... No. I know I've done one for Debo today with the housing strategy. So I think yours is 15th of September, isn't it, Councillor Sellis? I know I've written one of them down today.
Yeah, that's 15th of September.
So it's the 18th of August, Lisa?
It's the last Tuesday. My calendar's frozen, Chair. It's the last Tuesday of August. It's the week before. It's the 25th.
Ah, it's 25th. Yes, I've written it down in my diary. Yeah.